Welcome back to the Young Turks, everybody. It's Tuesday and we have got a big show for you. Perhaps too big. I felt that a few times while I was preparing for today's show. But thankfully, I'm not going to be doing it alone. I am joined by Jennifer Briney, host of a Congressional Dish podcast.
Hello.
And I think that we've got some stuff for you to sink your teeth in, because I know that you're a big fan of the in-depth day-to-day analysis of what Congress is up to, what they're not up to. So if people tune into your podcast, what can they expect?
Yeah, so I look into the stuff that Congress is doing that most people aren't talking about. So I watch the hearings that are super long and boring, and I read the bills, and I just tell you what's going on from the perspective of someone who just wants to know what they're doing with my money. And so I do really deep dives into Congress, and so yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's the type of stuff I'm obsessed with.
I was just thinking, so I read there's, none of the details have come out, but so I believe it's inside of the Texas legislature, some female legislators are compiling information about sexual harassment and sexual assault inside the legislature.
Okay.
Because it turns out that really old school Texans do inappropriate shit from time to time. And I wonder, in the US Congress, how much of that stuff goes on. If you actually had interns and pages and legislators actually say what's been going on, I feel like in the same way that Hollywood is a place that almost obviously breeds that sort of like excessive,
boys club.
Yeah, I feel like the next one would have to then be the Senate and the Congress.
Say that, and I wasn't prepared because I don't have the article.
It just occurred to me.
But there was an article.
This is not a tightly scripted show.
Yeah, there was an article recently though with women in Congress talking about how that does happen and no one really talks about it. So that would be
compile all that information. That would make a good piece or a good movie.
It would. It would also be a good reason to clean house.
Yeah,
get a lot
we
of
can
that
add that to the list of reasons to clean house.
There's so many.
Yeah, and actually we're gonna be starting off with that in just a second. But I forgot. I'm John, by the way. Thanks for tuning in. Also, we've got JR. He is, as always, JR rated over there. He's going to be perhaps chiming in from time to time. What you can expect on the show today, we're going to be starting off with some of the major elections going on across the country as we speak. Actually, the votes haven't come in, but the voting is happening. We're going to give you an update on the battle over the GOP tax bill. We've got Maine's legislature pretty brazenly striking back against the will of the people when it comes to reforming their voting system. And then we've got some more Republican hypocrisy and cliches on gun violence to close out the show. Hopefully we'll get to that. But as I said, we're gonna be starting off with the elections. Although we've had special elections throughout the country throughout this year, we haven't had a big election day since the apocalypse last November. And so now, if you haven't voted yet, please pause this video, go and do that. We will be here when you come back. But if you have already voted, let's continue. There are a lot of elections going on, both for statewide offices, also important ballot measures. And we're gonna be talking about all of them. The big one that everybody's talking about is this Virginia gubernatorial election, where you have Lieutenant Governor Ralph Northam, the Democrat, going against the former Republican National Committee Chairman, Ed Gillespie. If you had, like 3 years ago, predicted what that race would look like, with this long-time Republican insider, you would have assumed it would be a fairly boring and blasé race. But Gillespie has apparently been drinking whatever Trump was drinking during his election, because for whatever reason, that campaign has been like it's sanctuary cities and it's Confederate monuments, and Gillespie is pitching himself as effectively a Republican for the alt-right in a lot of cases. I know that the polls originally had Northam up pretty significantly. I believe Hillary Clinton won Virginia by 5 points. And now the polls are showing that it's within just a couple of points. So we don't exactly know what's gonna happen.
Yeah, and I'm concerned about this one mainly as a congressional nerd, I'm concerned for redistricting reasons.
Yeah.
Because this Ed Gillespie, is that how I say it?
Gillespie, yeah.
Yeah, he was one of the people that was the architect of Project Red Map. So they're not even hiding what they're doing. They're just redistricting so that the Republicans can't lose.
Yeah.
And so for him to be the guy, the problem with Virginia is that their legislature is controlled by Republicans. And so we would like to have a Democrat there to veto any shenanigans. And if Gillespie's the guy, like that veto ain't coming. So that's my biggest concern. And even though I know that there's some people that are concerned about Northam because he's very centrist and he said some things about sanctuary cities that is we have concerns.
Yeah.
But
That's
at
true.
this point, we do have to do lesser of two evils. We do. So I'm rooting for the Democrat here because Ed Gillespie's a big problem.
Yeah, I've been reading up on him. Look, I'm not gonna lie. It's not a race that I was following very closely until like the last week or so. Like I knew in the background it's going on, but you can only hold so many things in your mind simultaneously. And I've been reading up on him, and he, since becoming lieutenant governor back in 2014, has been sort of, I guess he's been reading the political winds and he's been moving in the right direction in terms of his rhetoric and everything on abortion rights and a host of other issues for the most part. But we want someone who was strong because it was right and it's what they believe, not necessarily just because they think it's politically expedient. As you alluded to, there's the sanctuary cities issue. And so that's been coming up throughout this race. Gillespie saying that he wants to, as governor, ban sanctuary cities, which is urgent because Virginia currently has 0 sanctuaries. It doesn't have any. What are you talking about, you ass? But he wants to ban them, and so he kept bringing it up. And Northam was speaking out against this, saying that we have to have respect and also protections for various people who could theoretically be abused by the state, and then, as the attacks go on, he gets worn down, the poll's starting to tighten up, and then he starts implying that he might be willing to do something about sanctuary cities. In the short term, I guess there's no harm since there aren't any, but there are inclusive cities which don't technically have the internal capacity to break state law in the way the sanctuary cities do, but they have these sort of aspirational goals. Hopefully, as governor, he wouldn't go against that. But obviously, this is exactly what the Republicans in 2017 want you to do. They want you to take a race that has consequences for redistricting and a number of other issues, and then focus on these bullshit issues. Not that it's bullshit to have the sanctuary cities, but they don't have they literally don't have them right now.
Yeah.
And he wants you to talk about Confederate monuments and all of that. And so it's gonna be interesting to see who wins, because if Gillespie wins by a couple points and it turns out that he is beating the polls with this sort of new approach, that's not good. That doesn't look good for the next year or two.
No.
For future races.
It's so frustrating to watch stuff like this because it's like the Democrats are taking the bait. Like this is a non-issue in Virginia. If we were talking about California governor, like okay, fine, then it's worth talking about. In Virginia, why is this an issue?
Yeah.
And so he's taking the bait and he's going further to the right instead of further to the left. Like
exactly.
He's appealing to the Republicans' base, not his own. And it's the Democratic Party for you.
Yeah, that is for sure. And we were talking about in our production meeting, what best case scenario, I guess, the Democrat actually wins and becomes governor, and then the legislature votes to strip of all of his power like they did in North Carolina. So maybe we have that to look forward to. Well, we have a great system in America. But as we said, he does have a slight lead right now. Gillespie has not, although his tactics have been mimicking Trump in several different ways, he hasn't necessarily been trying to tie himself to Trump specifically. Maybe because Trump is at like 32, 33, 34% approval ratings throughout the country. But Trump has been tweeting about Gillespie and about Northam and all that quite a bit. So
which works
we'll see what
great
effect that
for
has.
Luther Strange.
Exactly, yes. Yes, so we'll see if that actually has any effect. But that's not the only governor's race going on. Not far away, we have New Jersey, where we might at long last be seeing the backside of Chris Christie. I should word that differently. But we've been dealing with him for a long time. He is, I believe at one point was polled as the least popular governor since they had begun polling the popularity of governors. He was at like the low teens or something like that. And so now we have Democrat Phil Murphy versus Republican Kim Guadagno. And there's been, I think, consistently a double-digit lead for the Democrat in this particular case. So we'll see about that.
Sounds safer.
Yeah, hopefully the bridges will be a little bit more accessible.
And the beaches.
And the beaches as well. Man, he just doesn't like those things. Now this is a race that theoretically, and again, nobody's perfect. We could find reasons to be worried about what effect this guy might have. But here you have a fairly strong blue state. Many of the efforts that they have made to pass liberal pieces of legislation have been vetoed by Chris Christie. With Murphy in place, you might have progress on these issues. So Murphy supports legalization of marijuana. is proposing a tax hike on rich individuals and corporations inside of New Jersey. Let's see, promise to extend state level protections to undocumented immigrants, which would be a switch from Christie. And again, he is going to sign bills. He's pledged to sign bills that Chris Christie has previously vetoed. One of which, by the way, is a raise for the minimum wage to $15 per hour. Not immediately, it's a gradual thing, which isn't optimal, but it certainly will be nice for the people living in New Jersey. And that is a change you can get if Murphy does win there. So that's something.
That's something.
That's something to look forward to, I guess.
Yeah.
Let's see. We also have, you got de Blasio. I don't think anybody is really questioning how exactly that's going to go down in New York. So that will be assured by tonight. And then you have a couple of ballot initiatives that are certainly worth covering. So one is in Maine. We're going to be talking about Maine a couple of times in this hour. And that is a ballot initiative that would expand Medicaid coverage to 70,000 low-income residents in Maine. This is something that, and by the way, there's been this campaign against this ballot initiative saying that this would cost too much. The state would just can't afford to extend Medicaid to these low-income individuals. The federal government would be picking up 90% of the tab. Think about the good that can be done inside of Maine if this gets passed at almost no cost to Maine. So that's something that they want to do. And bear in mind, there has been attempted Medicaid expansion 5 times in Maine that was vetoed every single time by the Republican governor, Paul LePage.
Did they never, after the Affordable Care Act, Maine never did the Medicaid expansion? So this would be their first time?
This is a particular aspect of Medicaid expansion, but this aspect has been shot down multiple times. Okay. I'm not sure how much the general campaign got, but this is one that the Republicans in that state have been dead set against. And 5 vetoes, that's a lot of effort to stop people who can't afford their health insurance from getting it. And so again, hopefully people are voting. It's difficult to say. Polls won't close, I think, until the end of this hour, so we won't know. Even if it was immediately apparent, we won't know until after this hour. But I have read a couple of reports that anecdotal evidence is that in certain neighborhoods there appears to be less voting than there was the last time around in Virginia. That's probably not, when you're talking about a difference of about 3% in the polls, a change in turnout is pretty significant. But I know that a lot of people are watching this. A lot of people are going to try to say a lot about where the country is at and where it's going based on these results. I don't know how accurate that ever is, but this is a significant voting day after a lot of smaller special elections. And so hopefully I'll have some good news tomorrow.
Yeah, but we also have to keep in mind that in this country, unless the last digit on the year is even, a lot of people don't even know that they're voting today.
Yeah,
They'll wake up and just be like, oh, there was an election. And they find out on the news that night. So that's also a problem that we have, that we don't, these off-year elections, they don't get the turnout because the news doesn't get out there.
Yeah, that's true.
We're dorks, we're aware of it.
Yeah.
But a lot of other people aren't.
That is true, it's been said. I mean, hopefully with social media, that's helping at least the people. I mean, not that, like if you take Twitter, Twitter is not a representative sample of the United States by any means. It's people who are already self-selected to be more invested in news and politics generally. But that can serve as a reminder, and hopefully those people go out and alert their neighbors and all of that. Yeah, I don't know. It could be that very few people turn out.
I hope
certainly
I'm wrong.
Wouldn't be out of the norm for America.
So nice. The thing.
Oh, you're involved in the conversation now, JR. It looks like you're a nerd.
So, but the thing is, they keep talking about, and to your point, Jen, the referendum on this being the bellwether for what may happen with the midterms, when everyone is somewhat paying attention, still not even fully, because it's not a presidential election. But it's frustrating because that's said so much, but it's true that not many people even know that it's election day, that who they're voting for, what reasons they're voting for people, but we still count that as a sign of what may happen. How is it when they're not paying attention, but many more people pay attention when it's going to happen? So it actually, this whole idea of this being what's going to happen in the next midterm election doesn't really make a lot of sense, because it's not the same attention that's given to both elections.
Yeah, well, I mean, one thing that I think we have to remember is that, at least not necessarily for the ballot initiatives, although money is spent to advertise those, I think that the main Medicaid expansion, at least like the one big anti-organization spent, I think $500,000, and the big for it said they spent $2.5 million. I'm not sure if that's the case, but that's one thing that I read. There will be advertising for that, but for the statewide elections, there are still TV commercials. Like there's not a lot of strong evidence that TV commercials really sway elections that much, but they do let people know that an election is coming up, and they also generally cause you to hate both the candidates. They do those two things, and so hopefully, at least if you're living in those states, or if you have the misfortune of living in a media market but not in the state, I apologize that you have to watch those ads, but that does at least serve to remind people that it's coming up. Like we're not getting those ads here necessarily, but for all the elections in Washington and New Jersey and Virginia, hopefully they do know.
For sure, but even reading these articles today, it was like, if the Democrats don't win in Virginia, they're done in 2018. And it's like, I don't think so. I'm getting a lot of people emailing me about the midterms, which has never happened before. So there is more excitement for the midterms, and I just don't think that what happens today is something that we should be taking as a sign of things to come.
Yeah.
And I think you and I are in agreement on that. It's just, there's a lot of overreaction to the off-year elections that I hope that we don't participate in going forward.
I'll grant you that it's probably not the case that what happens today really, really matters for next year, but it feels good to say that it's true.
It gives you some hope.
Yeah.
If everything goes well.
It's like gambling. It's like political gambling. But anyway, that's what's going on. Hopefully if you live in one of those places, whether you're voting in the statewide elections, there's a lot of mayoral elections going on in a number of big cities actually. Important attorney general positions. I think Philadelphia's got a really intense AG race going on. Also the ballot initiatives. If you haven't voted and still can in those areas, a lot of these things do matter, so please get out there and do that. With that, we are going to take our first break, and when we come back, we've got the latest on the battle over the Republican attempts to reform the tax code. Let's see how they're doing. We'll be back after this.
Welcome to the Control Room, exclusive members coverage of 2IT postgame live from Rebel headquarters in sunny Los Angeles. So Jason, the air is electric after yesterday's postgame. He's talking about Miami. The only thing about this, Jason, is we've heard the Miami stories. I'm looking at Kasparian's interest here. She's giving him the cordial glance to the side, but I just don't know if it's really there.
Oh, that's where the vagina is.
Okay, that joke landed like Apollo 13 there, and then Kasparian gives him the courtesy laugh, gives him the Edwin wave.
Had you had sex at that point when you took that class?
Anyways, so
Hold on a minute. He's found an opening. Is he finding his way to come back, Jason? Unbelievable! Jake Kruger coming back with a comment. No one would have seen this coming.
And he's in the mood, and there's some music in the background. He's got the sideburns, he's got the long hair in her 30s.
He won't fan himself. There's no way he's ready to. I mean, I've expected.
She's like, well, that was something.
He's got it.
Okay.
It's unbelievable.
Every dog has its day, and this dog is having the best day of his damn life.
That was an outstanding postgame. If tonight's postgame is anything like last night's, we were in for another.
Exactly right, Francis. And don't forget to check out the TYT postgame after the Young Turks every weekday on tytnetwork.com/memberslive.
Hey, Cenk, what's up?
Aaron, I forgot my email password. What is it?
PASSWORD.
Welcome back to TYT Sports. Jason and Francis here. This is where everybody has to listen. Welcome to TYT Sports, everybody.
I am your host, Francis Maxwell.
Jason here. Welcome to TYT Sports. Turks and Jerks, TYT Sports.
Steph Curry signed with Under Armour.
Tom Brady's mad, by the way.
Do you hear me? Back on the TYT Sports!
Actually, leave a link in the description box below instead of lying about leaving a link in the description box below.
Editor, throw up another picture of the UK bacon. And another. And in fact, throw in another one.
Let me see your belly.
Beast mode.
Welcome back to the first hour of the Young Turks, everybody. I'm John and I'm joined by Jennifer. We're trying to break down some of what's happening across the country today. I'm trying to get my tweets available. There we go. Let's read some of the tweets you guys are sending in. Hashtag TYT Live. Crayfish Caddy has a reference to a story we covered on yesterday's show saying, good thing Rand Paul has government provided insurance to cover medical expenses. That is a good point. No, I feel bad for the guy. It seems like he really got the shit beat out of him. And by the way, I would like to give credit to Donald Trump for not yet mocking him on Twitter for that. I know that someone probably had to stop him from tweeting. Let's see, Ashley B says, I hope you all went and voted today. I agree. And Kara Curley, I believe this is a reference to when we were talking about Donald Trump tweeting about the Virginia governor's race, saying, he can say whatever he wants. His supporters have no clue what's actually going on in the first place. Knowledge and curiosity have died. And I don't know that I am ready to say that, but yes, people seem to be getting more insular, more tribal. There's just more and more, like it seems sometimes that on the internet there are cults of personality and cat pictures and nothing else. And cults of personality for particular cats. But that people, everybody thinks that they're a critical thinker. Everybody thinks that I'm the one who gets my media from a diverse range of sources, but nobody seems to actually want to do it in practice.
Yeah.
And it's not just Trump supporters.
I think I spend too much time on the internet. And it's like when I go off the internet and I hang out with people, I actually have a much better view of or feeling about how this country is. Because in my day-to-day life, I don't find people screaming at each other. I don't find these political fights. I find it in the screen.
Yeah.
And outside of it, we're actually okay. So I'm blaming us a little bit less than I am the media in the echo chamber. Because you have the craziest of our country screaming at each other online. Everyone else is just sitting back going, I don't know what this is. I'll vote in 2 years, but like there's a lot of people staying silent, not participating in this, and they give me hope.
Or they're just watching reruns of The Big Bang Theory.
That's true.
Yeah, but also, and to answer to this, the supporters' knowledge and curiosity have died. I know every time we report on something terrible that Trump has said or done, a lot of people will be like, why are you even bothering with this? It's never gonna have an effect. His supporters are cultists, and I think that there's people like that. But I also saw a poll today that amongst non-college educated white voters, the people that stereotypically are big Trump supporters, since the 100-day mark, his approval has fallen 13 points among that group, and that's the core. Yeah. I mean, 13 points that's significant. That can affect a re-election bid theoretically. So let's not get caught. Like, yes, it's super difficult to get people to realize things they don't want to realize. You have to continually jam it in their face and hope that they'll be reasonable, but it does happen if slowly. Anyway, let's move on to taxes for a bit. The pressure is currently on for Republicans to deliver something big on taxes. Not to deliver for their voters, sorry if I led you to believe that. I mean for the donors, of course. Many of the Republican voters, the regular run-of-the-mill people will end up either getting nothing or very little from this tax bill. Some, apparently 1 in 5 in a study I saw, might end up paying more taxes. But for wealthy individuals, for corporations, this is potentially an amazing bill. And those donors wanna see that it happens. And it could be that if they don't deliver this, they're in for some big trouble. And so we're gonna turn to that in a second. But first, revisions of the bill are going on right now. And as you pointed out earlier, we don't actually have the text of it. We don't know exactly what's gonna happen. And so we're getting reports coming out of some committee meeting hearings trying to get an idea of what they might be modifying. We've got a significant one for you. So this was tweeted. If we can bring up this tweet, you'll see this is significant. Look at that from Jim Tankersley. The Ways and Means spokesman confirms that the SAL is the state and local tax deduction. So that was one of the big things in the new bill that would have hurt regular people, not being able to deduct your state and local taxes. So it's gone for individuals, stays for pass-throughs. And what that means basically is summed up in the bigger tweet, is that a regular person is not going to be able to deduct their state and local taxes, but corporations will be able to, and rich individuals who create these dummy corporations that they funnel their personal income through effectively, people who have the capacity to do that will still be able to deduct state and local taxes in what is apparently the most recent draft. And so that is just another thumb in the eye of regular Americans. that they have to pay for this thing one way or another, and one way is to take away tax breaks. Not tax breaks for wealthy, powerful, connected people, but for regular people who might not even know that this is going on. And so we were talking during the break about this battle to get this passed. My belief is that the only thing potentially stopping it from being passed is how far they're trying to go in one step. They might be trying to get too much, driving up the deficit too much, turning off. There's a couple of Republican senators who've come out and said they won't vote for anything that raises it as much as it currently does. I mean, what do you think? I know that you're less optimistic that it will be stopped.
I don't think it's going to be stopped. I think they're going to get this one because people like the idea of paying less in taxes. You know, it's just, they're saying that it's going to be $1,000 each of us get to keep. And like, okay, you know, the healthcare thing they lost because that was about life and death issues. It was taking away people's access to doctors. It was a really easy one to understand. But when it comes to cutting taxes, I mean, even when you talk about deducting state and local taxes, I mean, my eyes glaze over and I love this shit. So it's like, I just don't see the groundswell of opposition happening with tax cuts the way it did with healthcare. And I think they're gonna get it. And even though there's some Republican squabbling, because there are people in the Republican Party, especially on the Tea Party side, that really do want to do something about the debt and the deficit. They're serious about that. So they could be somewhat of a problem, but they're vastly outnumbered in the House. I think there are people in the House on the Democratic side that vote with Republicans quite consistently that might jump over the side of the aisle. I just don't see.
That's the fear.
Yeah, I just don't see this dying.
Yeah, look, I mean, what we have to hope is that there's strong opposition inside of government to the plan to try to scare, you know, a couple people, and also to try to get some of those conservative Democrats to stay in line, as they did on the healthcare bill and a few other significant bills. But I think that it is really going to come down to the people watching this program, people across this country, making clear that this is something they will vote based on. Like, we can't afford defections, and we want to scare some Republicans, like happened with healthcare, to vote the right way, especially in the Senate, where the margin for error is negligible. I mean, considering the way they're going to pass this, they can lose 2 or 1. They can lose 1, I think. They can lose 2. If they lose 3, it loses, and so we need to put pressure on them. You're right about the state and local taxes probably does make people's eyes glaze over. One of the reasons I focus on that is for most Americans, if that goes through, that's a noticeable, significant
100%.
hit to you. And it's something that we do. Like, and I don't know about you, but when I do my taxes, there's a whole lot in that thing that I don't even know what it is, and I know I don't qualify for it. But I do deduct my state and local taxes. That's one of the few things we get. And that's why we focus on things like that they want to take away the deduction for interest you pay on your student loans.
Yeah.
Like, how many people watching this program right now are buried in student loan debt, and they just want to walk, like, and then just press down on the stuff burying you, just make it a little bit heavier.
And the medical expenses, they want to get rid of that one too. But that's one of those things that, like, all of this, not just I get why you focus on those deductions, but I'm just saying, like, all of the details of taxes, I just don't think that many people understand it, pay that close attention. They hear tax cut, they go, cool. I just think it's that simple. I mean, you do TurboTax, you hope it works out, and you don't get audited. I mean, a lot of us are very basic when it comes to taxes, and I'm speaking as one of them. You know, like, I just don't understand what all of the minutia of this issue is, and I think a lot of people are just gonna tune it out, let it go through. I mean, that's my crystal ball. I don't actually know, but I don't have a lot of faith in us understanding or caring enough about tax cuts to stop it. I hope I'm wrong.
So what about some of the pushback they're getting from groups like the Club for Growth? So Club for Growth apparently not super excited about this bill. We've got a statement from their president who said, while the corporate tax cut will lead to some increase in our nation's GDP, yeah, that's why they want it. That's why they want the corporate tax cut. The rest of the provisions on individual taxpayers fails the pro-growth test. I agree with him there. I don't think that these tax cuts will lead to growth, but I think we disagree about why exactly. He went on to say, the group called the higher taxes on the wealthiest Americans, which that's not true. I don't understand what that's a reference to, because I have kept looking over this. But they say that that's class warfare, the likes of which would make Democrats green with envy. It also said the cuts to the pass-through tax rate was too small. So they get this cut to the pass-through rate. It means many millionaires and billionaires will be able to pay a tiny fraction of what they're currently paying for the majority of their income. But that's too small. God, these people are arrogant. and said that there's no reason to wait to repeal the estate tax. I don't know a lot of billionaires. Maybe this dude knows a lot of billionaires that are like just on the edge of kicking the bucket and they gotta get that thing passed right now. I don't know why you have to rush it so much, but they're saying that this isn't enough.
Yeah. That's the crazy in the party.
That's bananas.
Yeah, that's the crazy in the Republican Party, and that's kind of why John Boehner's no longer there. There is this wing that's so extreme that if they don't get everything that they ask for, then they're just not going to support it. They're fun to watch because they're the one tanking a lot of this stuff. So that my hope is actually in this wing of the Republican Party. If this is going to go down, they're going to be the ones to do it. The Democrats, they're on the sidelines on this one, but there is a crazy wing.
Yeah, and I mean, they're cutting the corporate tax rate from like by 40%, I think is the amount?
From 35 to 20.
To 20, I don't know, I'm not good at math, but that's something like 40%, right? It's somewhere around there.
I have no idea.
That's, like we already have effectively an aristocracy in this country. A political and a financial aristocracy, generally it's the same thing, they're jammed together. And this is just like throwing like quick grow on it. Like, these corporations are already hoarding money. There is effectively zero evidence that showering these corporations with money will lead to one job actually coming from this. And yet they're gonna do it. We've been through this. Like you were alive under Bush, right? You saw the tax cuts that they had, the massive amount of money that they gave. It doesn't produce jobs. Let's actually, let's jump ahead for 1 second to that because TYT Investigates has been looking into this and they found one particular ironic example of that disconnect between the rhetoric coming out about what these tax cuts will accomplish and what we know they will actually accomplish based on experience. So if we could jump to graphic 24, you're gonna see a tweet from Rand Paul. So he says there, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, I thought it was called the Cuts Act, will create nearly 1 million new jobs. And if you were to click on that, you'd see that's not just him guessing. That actually comes from a report by the Nonpartisan Tax Foundation. Now, one of the execs on the Tax Foundation is David Lewis. And so David Lewis helping to produce this report from the Nonpartisan Tax Reform. They just always want tax reform, but they're not partisan. Fine. And then Paul Ryan gets to say that it's gonna create the jobs because that's interesting. David Lewis is not just some academic who runs stats regressions. He's formerly the executive director, corporate tax and chief tax executive for Eli Lilly and Company. And so that's a corporation that has had experience with big tax cuts before. And you can go to our website and you'll see the full breakdown of what TYT Investigates found, but in effect, Eli Lilly back in 2004 when we had this tax holiday, which is my favorite type of holiday, by the way. Oh man, my mom used to cook some great food for those. They repatriated $8 billion. They brought it back into the country at a lower tax rate that was allowed to them by the Republicans. It was 5.25%, which is crazy. That's like duty. Basically, like it was almost duty free to bring the money back in. And so this company, Eli Lilly, that had the chief tax exec that now is producing stuff that Rand Paul is using to push his plan, got $8 billion at almost no taxes. So man, they must have just grown and grown and grown. But for some reason, no, in 2004, when that happened, they had 22,751 domestic employees. 3 years later, that had dropped by 10%. As of today, it's lower than 19,000. So they've lost 15 to 18% of their workforce after being showered in billions of effectively tax-free dollars. So why would we believe that doing it again is gonna do anything other than enrich executives like the dude putting out that report?
Because they're lying.
That's what it is, actually. I think that's probably what it is, actually. Hold on, I'm gonna write to them to update the article. They're lying.
Yeah, I mean, they'll just say these things because they sound good, knowing that people aren't gonna pay attention. They're just lying.
So your prediction is that before Thanksgiving, it's gonna pass, and it's gonna pass on the first go through? Because I don't know if you know, this is on a constrained timeline. Before Thanksgiving, they wanna get this thing done. A massive rewriting of the tax code, and a handoff of literally trillions of dollars. They want to get it done in like 2 weeks.
I don't actually think they're gonna pull that off because we're also forgetting about some other huge deadlines that they have on December 8th.
What's that?
So we have to fund the entire government for 2018. They were supposed to do this in 12 separate bills that were carefully crafted in committee, and they never do that on time. It was due on September 30th, got none of them done. And so they pushed their deadline off until December 8th. Also on December 8th, we have to raise the debt ceiling. So we have 2 giant things that need to be done on December 8th, and they're gonna do this by Thanksgiving. I don't think so. Maybe the House will pass something, but I don't see this being signed because they also, again, we don't have the bill yet.
Yeah, we don't know what it is.
Yeah,
that
the more details
didn't really
come
stop
out.
them on a couple iterations of the healthcare bill.
Well, I mean, the House can vote multiple times on this, and we might see something like that. But the more details come out, the more these Club for Growth people start arguing, and then there's media reports about like, oh, middle class people are gonna get hit with tax increases. Like, oh God, we have to edit that. So you're seeing the edits happen already. These people are very big on pushing their deadlines. I highly doubt by the time we're eating turkey, we're gonna have something past both the House and the Senate. It sounds ridiculous to me, knowing how much they have to do before Christmas.
Okay, fingers crossed. But
that's not to discourage you from like writing to them and
no,
voicing
that
your
should
opinions.
encourage you.
You have to do it now.
Yes, that could happen if people take this seriously and bash them in the face over it. Now that said, we do have to take our second break. When we come back, we've got an awesome story coming out of Maine where the people banded together in a ballot initiative and pushed for a big change in the way elections are run. And the legislature said, not so fast. And we're gonna have that for you when we come back from this break.
I'm going to rule against Siri.
Okay.
I don't use Siri. No one actually uses Siri. And every time you press that button for a little too long,
I know.
Siri, how can I help you? Just shush. It happened earlier in the post game. I don't know if you
so
noticed.
over Siri. So over. And also,
Siri's kind of a bitch.
You know what? She is kind of a bitch.
Oh,
you know why? Okay, first of all, no one enjoys or is excited about setting their alarm clock to 6 a.m. But you know who is excited? Fucking Siri.
She just asked me that.
Oh.
She's like, do you want me to set your alarm clock for 6:30 a.m.? Like, no, I don't.
No, watch. Yeah, she's fucking eager to do it. Like, she's a weirdo. Watch. Set my alarm for 4 a.m.
I don't think it is.
I didn't find any appointments for tomorrow at 4 a.m. Shall I?
You know you're on air, bitch. Like, that's what's going on. Okay,
She's
but
like,
usually
I shall now fuck with you.
So usually I'll be like, set the alarm for 6 a.m. She'll be like, okay, I turn it on. And it's like, why are you so excited?
Hey Dave, as you can probably see, Skype froze. Frozen crash.
You know, I'm watching that documentary on the Vietnam War, and there was a TV journalist in the middle of some tiny little village in Vietnam doing live TV as the soldiers were burning the Vietnamese huts, and it didn't crash. And that was 1965, and he was in Vietnam.
Hey, Cenk, what's up?
Aaron, I want to do a YouTube live clip, but not live. Go.
back to the Young Turks. I'm John, joined by Jennifer. Having a good conversation. We got a lot more for you, starting with a few more of your tweets. Let's see. The Math Magician, I really like this tweet, said, this isn't a tax bill any more than the Republican health care plan was a health care bill. It's reparations to rich people for the crime of the New Deal. Hashtag social Darwinism. Yeah, and I tweeted something to the effect of, don't think of this as a tax bill, think of it as a non-consensual charity bill. Like, this provides an easy way for you at a cost of just $1,000 to $2,000 a year to provide for a billionaire in need. Now, we don't know if they're gonna send you like a picture of the billionaire like each month, and maybe he'll write you a little note, but that would be nice. I think they should add that. Let's see, Vance also tweeted, the people not participating, being silent, don't know what is really happening. It frightens me that there are people still indifferent to the status quo of our government when they are at risk of losing everything and they don't even know it. Vance apparently has access to 280 character long tweets, which I don't. So I'm jealous of Vance. That was the longest tweet I've seen so far. But you are 100% right, not to detract from your message there. I also want to do our member shout outs. 2 members we want to recognize on the show today, Matthew, Daniel, and Sarah Reed. Thank you for supporting TYT and allowing us to do this. With that, let's jump into a really interesting story that was suggested by a TYT viewer. I haven't seen much in the news about this, but it is certainly important and indicative of what we can expect as we continue to attempt to reform this country. Last year, voters in Maine passed a ballot initiative to switch their voting system over to what's called a ranked choice voting system. Now, there's a good chance if you're watching this show, you are familiar with what that is. It was talked about a good amount during the last round of primaries because it's widely seen as one of the ways, among other things, that it's intended to fix a lot of problems that third-party candidates could potentially make more headway in US elections. Now, it's important to know that up until right now in the US, it's used for some types of elections in 11 US cities, uniformly blue cities. But they passed this ballot initiative in Maine to switch over their voting system. Not for presidential races, just for the statewide races, but it is certainly something. Now, if you're not familiar with this or how it would actually function, here's a brief overview, although I recommend you read more up on this because there's a lot of interesting information. Instead of casting a ballot for a single candidate the way you do now, the voter would rank all of their candidates by preference. So if there were 4 people running for Congress, you would say I vote this guy number 1, her number 2, them number 3, whatever. If no one wins a majority on the first round of voting, which is actually often the case in a lot of races, the candidate with the fewest votes would be eliminated. For voters, that means if the eliminated candidate was your first choice, your second choice vote would be applied in the next round of counting. And so the idea there is, right now you have to make this decision between backing one candidate. And if it's a candidate that doesn't have a very high chance of voting, in many cases it might be that in terms of affecting the election, votes could be wasted. That may not be the right term, but the candidate doesn't get voted for or doesn't get elected. But with this sort of system, you could vote for whoever you want, and if there's no plurality, if they get 3%, 5%, 10%, and nobody gets over 50%, then your second place candidate would still have your support. And so it would free people up to support candidates that right now the system sort of tries to stop you from supporting. And that's not the way everyone would describe the system, but that's one of the ways that I see it anyway. Now, this is not common in the US, as I said, but ranked choice voting is used in Ireland and Australia. Also, it's how they pick Oscar nominees for Best Picture, which I thought was an interesting little fact. So they passed it in a ballot initiative. Look at that. People in Maine decide that the way the system works right now isn't delivering the results that they want. And they're not just looking to get one person in there. They're looking to change the system, to take matters into their own hands because the legislature wouldn't act. Unfortunately, then the legislature did act and they delayed the law's execution until 2021. Which in my experience is their way of delaying it until the end of time. Because that's a lot of time to delay and delay and delay. And so under the current system, lawmakers will have until the 2022 elections when you have the choice to vote for Donald Trump Jr. or Eric Trump to amend the law to make it constitutional or else face a full repeal. So not only is it delayed, but it will only go into effect at that point if they also amend the Constitution. And so all the people who worked so hard to pass this ballot initiative were like, no, you're not just gonna shut down our efforts. And so as of today, I believe it was today, a judge has decreed that they can have 90 days to collect over 60,000 signatures to place a people's veto of effectively the veto on the ballot. And so that's a lot of signatures to gather in a short period of time in a state like Maine. But today, actually, there are hundreds of volunteers going around the state trying to gather those signatures. This is something that already had a lot of support in Maine, and now I think after the Republican attempt to shut it down, people should be more interested in this. They should be more passionate about this issue. So hopefully you have already sought out and put down your signature for that if you live in Maine.
Yeah, and actually if you live in Maine, you can go to them. You don't have to wait for them to come to your door. It's the Committee for Ranked Choice Voting Maine, or RCV Maine. So go to them, make it easy. Sign their petition and then get your ballot initiative.
Exactly.
But how many times does Maine have to vote to get the same thing? Poor Maine.
At least a few times, and that's the thing that scares me. So thank you for pointing that out. Don't wait for them to come to you. It's a small state, but a couple hundred people could still not get to you. Go find them, and if you have a little bit of extra time, maybe you can help to gather signatures. I mean, 60,000 ain't nothing, but if enough people sign up, each person only has to get so many signatures, and then the people's will can actually be made into law. And importantly, as was supposed to be the case in US history, we've got 50 states. There's supposed to be these laboratories of democracy where we can try something out in one state or 5 or 10 and see how it's going. Like Colorado just passed how many years with legal marijuana, 5 or something? Last time I checked, it wasn't Mad Max there. So apparently it doesn't have to destroy your country. These things are useful. So it would be great to see Maine using that. Now, just a little bit of background on why it is that the Republicans might have shut this down. You should know that the state's current governor, Republican Paul LePage, first took office in a 3-way race in which he got only a plurality of the vote in a contest against Democratic and independent candidates. I haven't run all the numbers, but it's possible that had they had that system, he would not be governor today. And he wouldn't have been there to make racist remarks about out-of-state drug dealers, and he wouldn't have been there to shut down expansion of Medicaid to low and middle income Mainers. So that would have been interesting. It's also possible that if in other cases, like if in the Republican primary, if they had run that through ranked choice, I don't think Donald Trump would be your president right now.
Maybe not.
Because you had the establishment weak spineless Republican vote split amongst a whole bunch of establishment weak spineless individuals. And that wouldn't have necessarily been the case had they had something like this. Anyway, one other thing that I wanted to mention though is that this, I'm not saying it's a pattern yet, but the legislature shutting down this sort of effort reminded us here at TYT of another thing that happened, and that was in South Dakota when the people passed a anti-corruption ballot measure. And so what that was designed to do was it stopped certain sorts of gifts being given from lobbyists to politicians. It set up an independent organization in government to check for corruption and things like that. It was wider than that, but that was a few of the things that they did. And the legislature just said, no, we're not gonna let you set this up to constrain our activities, and they shut it down. And so it's great to see people getting out there and trying to reform the system, but we have to make sure that the politicians don't shut down those reforms before they can do what they're intended to do. So,
amen.
Amen, hopefully that'll happen. Anyway, this is just the beginning of that period of getting the signatures. I know we've got a lot of really dedicated, passionate people across the country. If this is an issue that you care about, this is an opportunity to actually get something done in that regard. So please look up more information. A lot more is available online.
Well, and I find it fascinating that one of the arguments against it is like, it's so hard, it's too complicated. It's like, how hard is it to rank 1 through 4?
Yeah.
Like, how dumb do you think we are? Like, Americans are not that stupid.
Yeah, by the way, the only thing there is on the internet anymore is top 10 lists. We are so trained in ranking things right now, cheeses and Kardashians. I think we can rank politicians. There ain't that many names in the list, okay? That is a great point. It's too complicated. Yeah, that's why you oppose it. I can't count to 4. Anyway, let's switch things up for our last story. Saudi Arabia has been roiled with conflict over the past few days, and it's conflict of both a domestic and an international sort. You have this internal power struggle where people have been rounded up, powerful, wealthy people inside of Saudi Arabia have been rounded up. And then you also have and increasing in the conflict in their ongoing war with Yemen, where over the weekend a ballistic missile was fired from inside of Yemen targeting an airport near Saudi Arabia's capital, something that had not yet happened in this conflict. That missile was shot down. It didn't actually reach its target, but in response, Saudi Arabia launched what has been pitched as, or reporters are saying, is the biggest, most damaging round of airstrikes in any one period since the conflict began. This is a conflict, by the way, that has already killed more than 10,000 civilians. Some people are saying over 13,000, and it's destroyed so much infrastructure that 7 million people are on the brink of famine. And Yemen has been the site of some of the worst cholera outbreaks in recent world history, which this is not the sort of history that you want to be making. Understand, of course, and we've talked about this multiple times, this is a conflict that the US has been aiding the Saudi coalition on by refueling their planes, providing intelligence and logistics, aerial support and things like that. And so this is not a thing that we are innocent on, thanks to Donald Trump's extremely close relationship with the Saudi government. He, for whatever reason, I don't understand it, Alex Jones can't explain it, is a big fan of them. And that continued yesterday with him saying that he has great confidence in King Salman and the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. They know exactly what they're doing. Some of those they are harshly treating have been milking their country for years. Now, that is not a reference to the war, that's a reference to the domestic conflict. And here's how that has looked. Earlier this year, the king sacked 2 sitting crown princes. This weekend, he sacked the commander of the Saudi Arabian National Guard. That is a 100,000 soldier strong unit that's supposed to protect the royal family. Damn, they have a lot of bodyguards. That's a lot. But that was the leadership of that was turned around. And there was a greater purge in which 11 princes, 4 ministers, and dozens of officials and businessmen were all arrested. And then those are the people that are still alive. 2 princes were killed. One is rumored to have been shot while resisting arrest. I don't think the shot part is the rumor. I think the resisting arrest part is the rumor. And also another prince died in a helicopter crash near the Yemeni border along with a number of other government officials. Now that is a thing that could happen, certainly. It's also suspiciously timed, although maybe we'll find out more in the future. And so that is the area that Donald Trump is apparently in favor of. Says that these sorts of roundups done for anti-corruption purposes are potentially a good thing. What is your reaction to these situations?
I don't think he knows what he's talking about. I don't think that he has the foreign policy experience to understand the inner dynamics of the Saudi royal family. But I just know that in my lifetime, I've never seen the Saudi royals do this to each other.
Yeah, certainly not this much at once.
No, I've never seen anything like this. I mean, it just kind of seems, and we've talked about the Yemen factor in Saudi Arabia, but what's interesting is they had this bomb that the Yemenis are saying, we did it. Like we're trying to bomb your airport in Saudi Arabia, but Saudi Arabia is saying, oh no, this was Iran's fault. So that's weird. And then Lebanon is somehow involved. It just seems like everything's hitting the fan in a really, really scary way.
Yeah.
And when it comes to Saudi Arabia, I mean, we have supported them with weapons that the way that the airport was saved was with an American missile. So we're involved. And
yeah, and I mean, there was that, I don't know for sure that it'll end up going through, but there was that gigantic weapons deal that he pushed for in the wake of his weird crystal ball meeting with the Saudi officials. There was this other deal for billions and billions of dollars of tanks. Like we know that cluster munitions that have been used in Yemen were supplied by the US. There was an attempt to stop those sales, but then the politicians said that that would stigmatize a weapon that in the right circumstance can lower civilian casualties. Yes, that's what cluster munitions are for, making sure that the wrong person doesn't die. Yeah, we are wrapped up in this thing. I mean, the situation in Yemen is about as rough as it gets around the world, other than maybe Syria. And we're a part of that. And he, for whatever reason, whether it's ideological, whether it's business, is going right along with it. And I agree, Iran, that is the big factor here, because that's lurking in the background of this entire Saudi-Yemen conflict. If that goes from being a proxy war effectively, or a half proxy war, to a full-on war between Saudi Arabia and Iran, then you're talking about some serious damage there, because both of them obviously have significant militaries. And I agree with your initial evaluation. I don't know enough about this situation to talk about it, but I guarantee that what I've just told you is greater than the understanding that our president has of this situation. So I feel like he is literally playing with fire when he is blanket signing on to these sorts of purges and all that.
Well, and it's interesting too, like one thing that we skipped over that is kind of strange is that all of these people that have been arrested are being held in the Ritz-Carlton.
Yes.
So nice jail you got there, Saudi Arabia. But
well, they are some of the richest people in the world. I guess they have an
are.
expectation of luxury.
Yeah, and they're getting it.
Yeah.
But that same hotel, there had been this big business conference the week before. And there's a lot of talk about Saudi Arabia's state-owned oil company. Trump wants them to offer shares up in the US stock exchange. Like that's the other thing he's talking about. So he is a business guy.
Yeah.
Like that is his whole persona. And so when I look at this and I see him talking about oil and just praising the king, like I'm thinking that we'll understand Trump much better if we follow the money.
Yeah.
The warring stuff, I don't think he understands it enough. So I just take everything he says with a grain of salt, and I just hope to God the rest of the world does too.
Yeah. I'm a little bit worried that the State Department might be run like Trump steaks.
The State Department's being run by ExxonMobil.
Yeah.
So the fact that there's
and it's
an
being
oil
skeleton
thing
run
here
by
too,
ExxonMobil.
Yeah, and just the oil factor, I don't know what the hell is going on, but it smells like fossil fuels. And it just makes me really nervous.
That is certainly true. And look, it's been obviously not just a dangerous situation; it's been a deadly situation. As I said, over 10,000 civilians have died. That is something that continues to this day. It's a situation where, if you were to go around the country and you were to talk to people about this conflict and our role in it, no one would understand why we are in the position that we're in. I'm not just talking about like hippies. You go to the strongest Trump supporter in the world, and if you don't prime them with Donald Trump loves these dudes, because that will help, they'll be able to swiftly turn around on Saudi Arabia then. If you just talk to them about the situation, why do they want our money being spent in support of this conflict in a part of the world 50% of the population couldn't find on a map, that ideologically they're inherently opposed to, that's killing civilians? Why would anyone be in support of that? And I don't understand why it's the uniform position of our current executive branch to do this with no pushback from the population when there's no support amongst the population.
But it's been like this for decades. So I mean, us and the Saudi Arabian family, the Bushes, I mean, they hold hands.
Yeah.
So I mean, this goes back a long way. It's not just Trump. So he might just be doing what we've been doing the whole time because he doesn't understand it. But I know that the general population doesn't really understand it. I mean, you and I pay a lot of attention to this, and we're still just like,
yeah, exactly.
So how is the average voter supposed to know what's going on?
One piece of good news that I did find in my research, though, is this crown prince who's been the driving force behind those purges, who appears to be setting himself up for an uncontested coronation, I guess, when his father passes. Apparently recently pledged $50 billion in investments into renewable energy.
Oh,
yeah, they're beating us in that area anyway.
He does want.
They're also letting women drive in June, so that's a good thing. Sure, they're killing thousands of Yemenis and they're rounding up and perhaps executing their political opponents, but the driving's progress.
There's that.
There is that.
I also think it's interesting that he's 32. He's younger than me.
Yeah, he's a regular Jared Kushner over there.
Yeah, it's like Saudi Arabia's being run by a kid. So is North Korea.
Yeah.
Like, how is this happening?
It's amazing how, as you age, what you consider to be a kid continues to change. Because yes, I too think 32. Oh my, I wouldn't trust you to do anything at 32. You're running a country.
Yeah.
But that's the way it runs. And ours is being partly run by Jared Kushner, who's scarcely older. Thank you for joining me. Where can people see, or I would say listen to more of your work at the Congressional Dish?
My podcast is Congressional Dish. You can find it on iTunes, Google Play, soon to be Spotify, iHeartRadio, and anywhere else that podcasts are found.
And I won't spoil it, but she was telling me about a very interesting project that she might be launching on the podcast soon, which you are going to want to be a part of. So go take a look at that. Thank you for joining us for this first hour. We are going to take a little break, come back with a second hour, lots more to be discussed. Don't go anywhere.
Now you guys are gonna think, especially my early behind the scenes footage, like I already went and looked at the comments in the member section. You guys, oh, he's high, he's drunk. I swear to you, I'm not. Well, I just tell you if I am,
Yeah.
right? And so I get goofy in the behind the scenes stuff.
What's the need for the butter with this pretzel? This is already super fattening it up. You don't need to put butter on this thing. Why'd they make me do it, Bitsy? Why'd they make me do it?
Hey, I'm just saying that this is known as the rear end guy. There's no way that every person he knows doesn't call him the rear end guy. I want you guys to see if you could see the lightning bugs. Whoa. Light them up. Light them up.
Is it true, Ritzy? I will now watch it later.
Bitsy, this is my cat. You know what his name is? Kiki Cat. Imagine him, isn't it? Hey, Kiki Cat. Kiki Cat. All right, this is Kiki Cat signing out.
It's John and Hannah on Think Tank.
Welcome back to Think Tank.
It's the anti-social media.
Is that what that is?
Shit. Maybe they're in the studio watching it.
Do you like how I dance like Kermit from the Muppets? Like just no.
Love it.
Do you?
No, because this is flipping stupid.
That's going too far. He's going to have the conversation.
No. This is a great Think Tank. You guys love this video.
Have I told you to check out Think Tank today? YouTube.com/Think Tank.
Been easy for me. I started off in Brooklyn. My father gave me a small loan of $1 million. All my life, I was told no.
He said I had small hands. They're not small. I never heard that one before.
Welcome back to the Young Turks, guys. I am Simone Boyce. So glad you're here with us today. I can't do this alone. I am joined by G Bizzle.
You probably could do it alone. I believe in you. Hello.
Thank you for the vote of confidence to start off this show.
Yes.
And we also have our friend Nando Vila over there on the end.
How's it going?
Hello. Great. Good to have you here,
Good
man.
to be here.
And then JR might pop in here in a little bit if we get out of line.
Little poppin'.
It'll be a special surprise.
So what we're gonna do, guys, we're gonna jump right into a little feud that Disney has been having with film critics. So it looks like there actually is going to be a happily ever after for Disney and all the critics and reporters who have come out in response to Disney's decision to ban the LA Times from their film screenings. A lot of people called this a retaliatory move because Disney basically didn't like this unflattering piece that the LA Times wrote about their relationship with the city of Anaheim. And this piece also, the LA Times says that they have exercised some aggressive political strategies in the city of Anaheim. But today, after several media outlets and critics have come out in support of the LA Times, Disney now says they are willing to kiss and make up with the Times. So let's take a look at the statement that Disney released. They said, "We have had productive discussions with the newly installed leadership at the Los Angeles Times regarding our specific concerns, and as a result, we've agreed to restore access to advanced screenings for their film critics." And Disney was really outnumbered here. So people like the Washington Post, the AV Club said that they were going to come out and boycott Disney films, press of Disney films. And then you had several film critics associations across the country in LA, New York, Boston, all said that they would not consider Disney's films for awards this year. And a lot of people have just been calling Disney really petty for this move. It almost seems like a measure of censorship on their part. So just a little bit of a refresher on the article in question here. It was titled, "Disney is paying its share in Anaheim." And the LA Times reported on the subsidies, the rebates, the protections from taxes in Anaheim that Disney receives and is still working to receive in the future. The LA Times says those subsidies, those total $1 billion. And then the LA Times also referenced this parking garage, a specific parking garage there. We'll show you that piece from the article. It said, even if the parking garage fills just half of its spaces, it would still generate more than $35 million in annual revenue. That money all goes to Walt Disney. City of Anaheim, which owns the garage and spent $108.2 million to build it, still charges Disney just $1 a year to lease it. Now, the LA Times came out and said Disney never asked for a correction on this article, but the entertainment giant still saying that the LA Times showed a disregard for basic journalism standards. Now, full disclosure, I am a member of a film critics society, the Broadcast Film Critics.
Wow.
But I don't think you need to be a member of a film critics society to see that Disney was in the wrong here. What do you think, Grace?
Oh, yeah. Also, their statement is a little questionable, especially when they say, you know, we had a productive discussion with the newly installed leadership regarding our specific concerns. Were their concerns journalism? Because first of all, and they make a really great comparison to the Streisand effect, because I hadn't heard about this at all. I'm not a part of a film critic association. This sailed way over my head until I think I saw Jake Tapper was like, hey, if you want to check out the article that Disney doesn't want you to read, check it out. And I was like, oh, I'm super gonna do that now.
Yeah.
So I did, and I actually felt as though it was a pretty even-handed approach by the LA Times. Now they do bring up some concerns about whether or not Disney is, Anaheim's resources could be more equally distributed, or maybe they could be distributed in a better way. They raise some concerns, but they also bring up that Disney is still the largest taxpayer and employer in the city. It's an even-handed piece of journalism that probably no one would have paid attention to had Disney not done an incredibly stupid, and some people are saying, evil conglomerate, big corporation. I think it was really just a dumb move on behalf of their PR department, and very petty, like you pointed out. This was just incredibly petty, and just like the Streisand effect, it's more obvious than it ever would have been.
Nando, you think they shot themselves in the foot?
Well, absolutely, especially because, what the article alleged was nothing, super controversial. It was a plain fact that, large corporations in the United States lately have just been able to wield so much power and influence. Like, if you guys know what's happening with Amazon now, where they're running basically a sweepstakes over where their second headquarters is going to be, and you have all these local governments basically competing with each other in a race to the bottom to see who could give them bigger tax breaks, bigger financial incentives to come to these massive, super profitable organizations. So like these massive corporations basically have the local governments. They can hold them hostage for whatever they want. Like this, the example of the garage is a particularly, grotesque one, where $100 million in public money, which, in the article it's framed as like, the city of Anaheim. That's like the residents of Anaheim paid for that.
Right.
And all the profits go to the Walt Disney Corporation, right? And because of course the Walt Disney Corporation could just hold a gun to the head of the residents of Anaheim and say like, either you give us these massive tax breaks or we can just leave, or we stop investing or whatever, like, so if you're gonna extort someone, it's probably best to just keep it quiet and not bring more attention on yourself when this article comes out.
Well, it got bad because Ava DuVernay, who's an incredible filmmaker, she's actually working on a movie with Disney. And so she actually came out in support of the film journalists who were fighting back against this censorship move from Disney. And we'll show you that tweet. She says, "I am saluting the film journalists, standing up for one another, standing with you." Now, I did hear an interesting sort of other take on this. These film critics, they really are there to service the moviegoers, right? And to make sure that moviegoers are spending their money wisely.
Right.
So, do you guys think that boycotting, that all of them coming together and boycotting Disney was a move that sort of shafted moviegoers at all?
No, because it was so short that we didn't really see much of an effect from this. I think that as soon as we saw this trending on social media, you knew that Disney, I can't believe how stupid they were here. I really can't believe they didn't sort of workshop this in one of those board meetings a little bit more for them to realize, oh, this is gonna be really bad. This was trending on Twitter. You had, again, you have incredibly celebrated filmmakers like Ava DuVernay. Like when she comes out and she's directing one of y'all's movies,
yeah, if she's willing to put it on the line, yeah.
So they acted pretty quickly, but I think that is an interesting point where our film critics perhaps. Should they have, not toed the line? I don't know.
Well, they can't be bullied by the movie studio, right? Like if the movie studio is threatening, to cut them out, that is a direct threat. Therefore, like it's like they're tainting the sort of process, right? Like intimidation would lead to basically, maybe getting journalists to review their movies more fairly, right? So it's important for them to stand together against this kind of tactic. So in the short term, maybe whatever latest Disney movie, Thor Ragnarok or whatever, might not get the full spectrum of reviews. But like in the long run, moviegoers are better served by not having the studios basically bully the journalists into giving them positive reviews. If not, like like if they write something that they don't like, they can just threaten to withhold screenings in the future, and then then everyone will just give positive reviews to every movie.
And that's something that Disney has said in the past, like. Basically, the media is beholden to us. Like we are the ones who are the gatekeepers of whoever gets to come to our screenings. And I guess that's true. If you're a private entity, you don't have to allow everyone to screen your films.
Doesn't that feel like a Regina George move though?
Like you can't come to my party. If you said something mean about me, then you can't come, even if it was proven true.
Like, then no. I think it's just incredibly petty. It's so stupid on their part. This is really bad press.
It would have been interesting to see how this all played out, though, over the holiday movie season, because you have the big new Star Wars film that's coming out. But I'm glad that Disney sort of came to their senses here. And with that, we are going to move on. We're going to make a hard left turn to healthcare and Obamacare. So November 1st, it marked the first day of open enrollment for Obamacare under the Federal Health Insurance Exchange. And the numbers that we're seeing may actually come as somewhat of a surprise to Republicans. So we're actually seeing a surge in Obamacare signups, even as Democrats feared that there might be a decrease after the Trump administration, significantly cut back on Obamacare ads. The administration cut the outreach budget by 90%. But take a look at these numbers. We'll put a graphic up there on the screen for you. The Hill is reporting that a source close to the enrollment process reveals 100,000 people signed up this time last year, and now we're looking at this year, we're looking at 200,000 have selected a plan for 2018. And then judging the traffic on healthcare.gov on November 1st last year, we had 750,000, whereas 1 million people have visited healthcare.gov this year. Important to note that the enrollment period has been cut in half by the Trump administration, so it's only lasting for 45 days this year, ending on December 15th. Do you guys think that by pulling back the outreach budget, that actually, what do you think is the cause of the surge in numbers? Could that have been part of this cause?
I do think it has something to do with the uncertainty of people wondering what is going to be the fate of the healthcare system as it is now. I did see something that said signups early in the enrollment season are often people renewing their coverage, not new enrollees. But we do see that all those hits to the website show that there is a peaked level of interest, at least
interest.
Yeah,
right.
at least there is interest. And now the question is, will that roll over into people going to their locally elected officials, publicly elected officials, and asking for a change in what we see this administration rolling back and some of the, again, some of these insane cuts. Cutting that outreach budget by 90% is real. I mean, that's like, they're gutting it. They're gutting healthcare right now. And we'll have to see if this increased interest perhaps leads to a change. I think it's not enough. I think this is, I mean, what the Trump administration wants is for Obamacare to fail. And unfortunately, these numbers aren't encouraging enough for me to make a hard line and say that Obamacare isn't failing.
Yeah, it's at the beginning. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's at the beginning, but this is the thing. I think we a lot of times underestimate the things that Donald Trump says as actually promoting. He's big on promotion and saying what he's gonna do. And he says something, he's an entertainer, everybody listens, oh my God, if I get my face out there, it's gonna be good PR. He's been talking, he and Republicans, even before when he came in, have been talking about shutting down Obamacare and how unpopular it is and how everyone hates Obama, and they keep talking about it. So they've already promoted it so much more than when they cut down the funding that goes out and tells people about it. They're promoting it way larger than anyone else would have before. So even people who support him, and we've had these kinds of polls before where people support the president, but then when it comes to the real things that affect their lives, they still want their Medicare. Yeah. They still want their programs. They're like, well, yeah, you're not gonna take away what I need. So even people who support him on the surface still go and be like, well, yeah, my knee's hurting. I'd like to go to the doctor.
That's a very important point. A very good rule of thumb in politics that almost is always true is that any expansion of the welfare state, whether it's Social Security or Medicare or anything like this, once it metastasizes and takes hold within the population, becomes very popular and very difficult to roll back. I mean, Social Security was enacted in the 1960s, and despite the fact that, there's been bipartisan agreement amongst elites to cut Social Security for as long as I've been watching politics, they've been unable to because voters like it. And it's one of the few things that they're able to, because it's a check in the mail that they get every month, right? So the expansion of Obamacare as sort of compromised and as kind of half measure, even though it was a Republican, all the problems with Obamacare, it was still an expansion of the welfare state. That does help people in their day-to-day lives. That shows that despite the vicious attacks from the right, which is why they're so desperate to roll it back before it really takes hold, it just shows that it's remarkably popular despite sort of a full-scale media attack from the right. So this is why Republicans are always so afraid of any sort of expansion to the welfare state. That's why they're always looking to cut it back as much as possible, because once it takes hold, it's very, very difficult.
I think what you said, Grace, we're getting towards the end of the year here, and there is seemingly this sort of panic or anxiety about what the future of healthcare in this country is. And I mean, Republicans still haven't delivered on their promise to repeal and replace Obamacare, which is something that they have been banging the drum about for several years now. All right, guys. Anything else anybody want to add on this? We're good to go?
I think we nailed it.
All right, you guys killed it.
Nailed it once again.
Crushed it. All right, so next, all right. Making another hard left, guys. Hip hop fans, artists alike, the whole hip hop community, they're rallying behind this hashtag Free Meek Mill. He is a Philadelphia-based rapper, and yesterday a judge there sentenced him to 2 to 4 years in prison for violating his probation. Now, this not only shocked Meek Mill and his legal team, but also the prosecution, who suggested he not receive jail time for the violation. Just a little bit of context though, this is the same judge that sentenced him back in 2007 when he was arrested on numerous drug and gun charges. He was convicted of 2 felonies. And this judge, Judge Janice Brinkley, she handed down this sentence, in her words, because he failed some recent drug tests. He didn't adhere to her travel restrictions that she had put in place. And he was also arrested twice this year, once for assault in an airport and once for reckless driving. in New York. Now, it's important to note that both of those charges have been dropped. But let's talk about some of the response that we're getting here from the hip hop community. So Jay-Z spoke out about this. He called the sentence unjust and heavy-handed. Let's take a look at that tweet that he had up there, because I can't find my graphic sheet. Okay, there we go. Can we put his tweet up there? So Jay-Z said, it's actually a statement, not a tweet. He said the sentence handed down by the judge against the recommendation of the assistant district attorney and probation officer is unjust and heavy-handed. We will always stand by and support Meek Mill, both as he attempts to right this wrongful sentence and then in returning to his musical career. Now, Jay-Z is not the only one speaking out about this. Kevin Hart also as well. What do you guys think? Was it too harsh?
Yeah, I mean the sentencing guidelines in the American criminal justice system are harsh for every single crime. You know, like 4 years for a few misdemeanors is like a preposterously long time to send someone to jail for. I mean, it's just not like we don't realize how punitive our system is compared to basically every single other democracy in the world. So yeah, this is a super harsh sentence, and it goes to show another general rule of thumb is that in America, rich people don't go to jail unless they're black, because whether it's people in high levels of government or high levels of business, they don't often go to jail, no matter what. They always find a way to wiggle out of it. But unless you're black, and then you get the harshest possible sentence for not even a felony.
Yeah, and as I understand, the lawyer doesn't tend to file an appeal, which I absolutely think that they should, because it just seems like such an overreach in this case with what the judge is putting forward. Mill's attorney says that the judge gave management advice to Meek Mill and that also ordered him to attend etiquette classes. Just in general, it is a bizarre sort of overreach of justice in this case. It's so strange that even the prosecution would say, yeah, we're advising against jail time. I mean, he's already served, I believe, 8 months, and then he's had this insane extension of probation it began at 5 years, and then it was upwards of like a decade for a drug offense. I mean, he had a second parole violation in like 2014, of which he served for 5 months. It really does feel like an overreach right here. And then this is sort of the long arm of the law that just goes unchecked. There's this unchecked authority, which was up to her discretion, and it seems like she wanted to send a message.
Well, I'm not disagreeing that, of course, there is rampant discrimination within the criminal justice system and it needs reform. But at the same time, I don't know that it's fair to say that there's a racial element here. This was a black woman who was a judge who handed down this sentence, and we can show you what the judge said. She said, I gave you break after break, and you basically just thumbed your nose at this court. Now, what she's referring to is several probation violations on Mill's behalf that happened in 2011, in 2013, in 2014, in 2015. And then his response to her inside the court was, I'm human, I'm not perfect, I'm asking for mercy. You gave me the ladder to do what I have to do to prevail in my struggle. I made it this far, I can't really go back and start over. Now, he did say that he was struggling with a Percocet addiction, but I mean, after you violated your probation time after time after time, does the I'm human defense really work?
Well, I mean, to go back to the fact that the judge is black, I mean, the system is.
I understand that it's a systemic issue.
Like one of the officers in the Freddie Gray death was black as well.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's more of a institutional question. It's very hard to imagine a white celebrity going to jail for 4 years over a probation violation. I mean, I don't have I haven't looked, but I can't imagine that that's ever happened. That it's just the way that the system sees everyone. I mean, his I'm human defense. I mean, yeah. I mean, I don't know if that holds up in sort of a court of law. But I mean, what's clear is that this was not some sort of violent crime that makes him a danger to the rest of society. To put him away for 4 years is just an insanely long time for a probation violation. It's just, I don't know. I find it very hard to believe that anyone could think that this is like a fair sentence.
I do hear what you're saying though, in the sense of like he violated his probation a number of times. He was given warning after warning, but I'm just thinking about, isn't there a better use of our taxpayer dollars than to keep this guy who is not violent off this, like, you know what I mean? Like, we have to put him behind bars? No, I mean, I think that there should be some sort of a, maybe fine him or make him serve insane and awful community service. Teach him, there's a way to teach him a lesson and hold him responsible, because I think that he was acting irresponsibly. Booking shows in areas where she had said, do not perform here. That's stupid. That's something you can obviously follow up on. Don't do that. Maybe your management advice was, on good authority after all. But to lock this person up, I just do not think that the punishment suits the offense. But I agree, I hear what you're saying, and I do agree with you to an extent of this is a guy that he was sort of thumbing his nose at the court. Does that mean that we're locking him up? I don't think so.
And I just want to go back to what you were saying. I don't want to give off the impression that the skin color of a judge should have an influence over the sentencing or
it might, there's no, it might go either way, but I think that it's more of a systemic question than the sort of like an individual dispute between two people.
There is also the argument that there are a significant number of black and brown men who are incarcerated who are wrongfully convicted, and I just wonder if maybe some of these people who are speaking out about this maybe can't also speak out for them as well, for people who don't have the money to hire the best legal defense and who don't have a cushy jail cell like he's probably gonna get, may or may not get. So I guess that's perhaps just another argument there as well. All right, okay, so we are gonna take a quick break and we'll be right back. We'll see you soon.
All right, we got a graphic incoming. Putting up 3, 2, 1. All right, video next. And next video. And power panel. And dropping it.
Today is truly a historic day with the Supreme Court decision that makes same-sex marriage legal nationwide.
So this is one of those days in American history, it doesn't come along that often, where we have expanded the circle of liberty.
Look, all we try to do on this show, okay, is to give you perspectives, right? So you can get a better understanding.
We need to change our mentality and understand why these people are trying to leave their own countries and everything that they've known, everything that they've built. It's not to come here and harm you.
Anytime you force someone, like they did in Arizona, to carry their paperwork, it's to remind them every day that they do not belong in your society.
Now that is the sound of fascism beginning here in America.
Doesn't that scare you? Don't you see history repeating itself? That xenophobia and faux populism to get people worked up to attack outsiders.
That is violent rhetoric, and your violent rhetoric translates to violent actions. If you don't get that, well, you're either in denial or you know it's true and you just don't want to admit it.
What's the message we're sending to the rest of the world? I mean, give us you're poor, you're tired, and we will greatly mistreat them under horrible conditions where some of them will die. That's not what the Statue of Liberty says.
If you asked me to come up with something insulting to Latinos, I couldn't have done anything like this. I wouldn't have thought to insult their grandkids.
2/3 of the people shot when they're unarmed were blacks and Latinos. That means they were wrong. They're like, who cares? Shoot them, shoot them, shoot them, shoot them.
Look, my dad was born in Syria. My dad could have stayed in Syria and he could have been a victim of all this, right? And the thought of the United States saying no to Syrian victims, I don't know, it makes me incredibly emotional and incredibly angry because I think it goes against what this country's about.
The fighters, the warriors, the ones who go the extra mile, in this case literally, to provide for their family and to look for that American dream. And they shouldn't be forced to live in an American nightmare.
Hey, welcome back to the second hour of TYT Live. Simone, Grace, and Nando, thanks for staying with us. I'm gonna read a couple TYT Live tweets and then I'm gonna toss it over to you, Simone. You're in the hot seat today. Old Turk says, because of folks becoming active and pushing healthcare.gov every day, that is in response to the healthcare story that we covered earlier. Interesting. Chris Hook says, let's give some love to Simone Boyce for hosting hour 2 on TYT Live. What up? And in that same vein, Craig Ward says, how about Stronger Things t-shirt in the TYT shop? So maybe you're starting a trend. Maybe this is something that we should get going. And then Admiral Marsden says, celebrity or not, he violated probation multiple times.
Yeah.
Sorry to say, but jail time may drive it home.
Let's put Bush in jail then.
Interesting.
Right?
Interesting.
No?
So yeah, keep those tweets coming. Hashtag TYT Live to join in the conversation. Maybe we'll read a couple out later on in the show. With that said, now Simone, over to you.
Grace, thank you so much. All right, guys, that was such a newsy transition. I love it.
Over to you.
All right, so now we're gonna talk about a little clap back that Sia did. And it was a pretty epic clap back. Might have gone all the way to the moon. That's how epic it was. So Sia, she released a photo of herself, but not just any photo, okay? This was a nude photo of her that was taken from behind because some sort of agency or some person was trying to sell this picture to her fans, and they said, if you make the purchase, this photo will be unblurred, and you'll receive an additional 14 images. There you can see it right there. So Sia clapping back in her tweet, she says, someone is apparently trying to sell naked photos of me to my fans. So she beat him to the punch. She said, save your money, here it is for free. Every day is Christmas.
That's a great tweet.
So, good job, Sia. I mean, there have been so many celebrities, I feel like mostly female, unfortunately, that have fallen prey to this. I mean, you take some sexy pictures for your spouse and somehow through the interwebs, it winds up getting into the wrong hands, and it's just unfortunate. There was that time that we saw Orlando Bloom's eggplant on a paddleboard.
And Justin Bieber as well.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Tiger
so
Woods.
men have fallen victim to this as well.
You gotta do some Googling.
Yeah, should I now?
Yeah.
Or don't, because it is a violation of their privacy, but.
Thank you. Driving the point home here.
Sorry.
Is this how to handle something like this, Grace?
I think, my feeling when I heard about this story was, if this is the sick, twisted world that we're gonna be living in, where people are just selling naked images of people who did not want that and who are just having a moment in their own privacy online to make a profit, then yeah, I guess this is the way to deal with it, in the sense of just owning it, making sure that these assholes do not get a penny of your fans' money. But fans is, I think actually Sia was being very generous when she said, sell naked photos of me to my fans. I think real Sia fans, and this is something that I saw on Twitter as well, would have no interest in purchasing these photos that she, that violated her privacy online. So fans is a generous word, but I think that for Sia to make sure that these people don't get a penny from anyone who would want to see these photos, good for her. This is the way to handle it. However, it is so unfortunate that there has to be some sort of a protocol in this day and age on how to handle it when your nudes get leaked online. Like that's really messed up.
I mean, one of the saddest parts about this whole story is that whereas 99.99999% of celebrities like love the camera and love, getting their picture taken and like being out in public, whatever. Sia is like the glitch in the matrix in which she's like the only one who really is kind of she recoils from the camera. She famously like covers her face. She doesn't like to be her picture to be taken of her. Yeah. So the fact that it happened to her of all people, I mean, I'm guessing she's probably going through a pretty hard time. So the fact that she did this is incredibly courageous, just in a way to sort of take back her agency and control. But yeah, I do feel really bad for her because it's got to be brutal. I can't even imagine.
Oh yeah, and I mean this happened to Jennifer Lawrence, I think, and it's such a violation when and the different thing is though with this looks like it was some sort of paparazzi photo, kind of like the ones that were taken of Brad Pitt and Justin Bieber, where they're just in their element, they're nude for whatever reason, and then someone violates their privacy by sneaking a camera or drone over the fence. So yeah, but it just in any instance, like, can you just not be a terrible person and share nude photos when people like without someone's permission? Can we just not do that? Is that so hard?
Is this gonna go way faster now? Because she did it though too, because look, like you said, we could list, if we have to look it up to list, I think it was actually the cloud violation that got Jennifer Lawrence and many other celebrities, right?
Yeah.
Which was even worse.
It's even worse.
Yeah, because at least there's always the argument of stop taking these pictures, how could you send that over the internet webs and somebody's gonna intercept it? Because that's being irresponsible, knowing people are gonna look for your ass. So literally. So at least in this aspect, it looked like someone had taken a paparazzi photo of her like at a beach or something somewhere, who knows? And so they go by so fast that by Friday, no one's gonna remember, not remember, but no one's gonna be talking about it anymore. So at least she got the tension out of the way. She's gonna have Tuesday of everybody talking about this, and then by Wednesday they're gonna go, oh, I totally forgot about that picture. And it's the best way to do it. It sucks that it has to be that's the best way to do it.
I just feel like we should just have a PSA for people that are looking for these naked pictures online. You guys know there's porn, right? There are many websites, millions of people who have said
anything
that
you want.
It's okay to take photos of me naked, that want you to click on that, a lot of times for free. So why not just do that and leave people in the decency of their own privacy?
That's what they want.
I have this theory
they want pictures of people that didn't want them to see.
Yeah, I have this theory that in about 20 years, basically we'll have seen every single public person naked at some point. So there's gonna be like an inflection point when every single public person.
We're gonna just start doing the show naked
in
20 years.
So at some point we're gonna elect a president who we will have seen naked, because there just won't be able to find candidates who don't have some sort of naked picture floating around some cloud or some network somewhere, and then they will get hacked and they will be made public, and they just won't be able to find anyone because everyone has done it.
I shouldn't laugh because this is, I don't disagree with you, and I think this is a terrifying idea. It's just the world that we live in, and I think that with with the Russian interference in the election, you're seeing how social media is just really sort of gotten out of control, and we're in this new time. It's almost like the wild, wild west, and we've got these new ways of distributing and receiving information. So I wonder, and I'm gonna pose this question to you guys, is it time for some sort of regulation when it comes to these nude photos that are a violation of someone's privacy or rights or freedom, or is that overreaching?
I think that there should be a lot more regulation over social media monopolies in general. That they're like a company like Facebook, or if you think about how much power they have throughout the whole world, the fact that they're so opaque and outside of sort of the political process is a huge worry. I'm worried about criminalizing this kind of thing because, especially in our country, whenever we criminalize something, we just ramp up the carceral state, which is already out of control, and the burden will undoubtedly fall on minorities and the poor. Again, rich people won't get in trouble for this kind of thing. The poor and minorities will. So I don't think that the response should be a punitive one, but I do think that there should be more oversight and democratic control over these large, monopolistic social media platforms.
Yeah, I definitely echo what I'm hearing from you. And Jennifer Lawrence went so far as to say when her photos got leaked that she felt it was a sex crime. So I do think that there needs to
agree.
Yeah, I do feel that there needs to be stronger boundaries and regulations to make sure that we shouldn't have to live in this day and age where it's just sort of par for the course that anyone's we're talking about a celebrity right now, but anyone could access someone's compromising or intimate photos and just leak them online or sell them or blackmail you. It's not right. It's just not. So there should be some more over regulation and oversight, and I think that there is a way to do that is comprehensive and also that isn't necessarily overly criminalizing a non-violent offense, but that is something that is still very criminal in nature and predatory in nature. I don't think that we should just settle for well, this is the world we live in. It is right now, but let's aim to do better.
Well, the other thing that we could do is have more resources to protect ourselves, more information. Right now, people are just zipping around the naked pictures like the interwebs like it was nothing. There can be ways to do it if you're so inclined, to do it in a more secure fashion than is currently. So like, I think also, some form of protection that you can sort of take is probably a good idea.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for that. I'm pleased with where that conversation went. I feel like we had some.
That's good.
Yeah, definitely.
Once again,
we all learned a valuable lesson.
Yes, we did.
Came together, and it was great. Thank you, Sia.
All right.
Sorry, what happened?
Now we are going to talk about pizza, which unfortunately
we don't have.
This is my favorite story of the year.
Is it?
This
though?
is my
It
favorite.
just-
I love this story so much.
No,
it is the most perfect story for our day and age. It really is everything.
It's tragic though, because pizza and pepperoni have become politicized, and that is very disappointing. So we're going to start with Papa John's, the CEO, John Schnatter. You've seen him on the commercials, better ingredients, better pizza, Papa John's. He
nailed it.
Thank you.
You should be a spokesman.
That was really convincing.
Who needs John when there's Simone?
Yeah.
Better pizza?
Yeah.
Pop ingredients? All right, we're getting a little squirrely here. Okay, so John Schnatter, I'm having a hard time with his name, John Schnatter.
Yeah, because he sounds like an asshole,
I'm not saying that, I'm just saying I'm struggling with that syllable. All right, so he spoke out about the NFL protests. Believe it or not, that's actually where this starts. So he said, the NFL leadership has hurt Papa John's shareholders. The NFL has been a long and valued partner over the years, but we're certainly disappointed that the NFL and its leadership did not resolve the ongoing situation to the satisfaction of all parties long ago. This should have been nipped in the bud a year and a half ago. So he was basically implying that by professional athletes taking a knee during the national anthem at NFL games hurt Papa John's pizza sales. That there was a correlation there.
Makes sense.
And he says this because the protests have caused NFL ratings and viewership to decline. Therefore, less people are seeing Papa John's pizza ads, which means less people are buying Papa John's pizza. So that's the logic there. Although Pizza Hut, a competitor for Papa John's, they said that for them, the protests, the decline in NFL viewership, it really hasn't hurt their pizza sales at all. So following John Schnatter's comments on the protests, a neo-Nazi and white supremacist website, I'm not even gonna tell you which one it is because they don't deserve publicity. They declared that because of his statement, because of his stance on the NFL protests, that Papa John's became the official pizza of the alt-right. I'm just taking a moment, guys.
I love this story.
I'm just taking a moment. So, in response to that, John Schnatter, he said that we condemn racism in all forms and any and all hate groups that support it. We do not want these individuals or groups to buy our pizza. So the company taking a very hard stance against Nazis.
Brave, very brave.
What do you do with Papa John's pizza now? What do you do with it now?
It's good that they released a statement saying we do not want Nazis to buy our pizza. That's good. They're still gonna have the reputation for a while as the pizza company that had to come out and say, hey, we don't like it that Nazis love our pizza. Pizza Hut didn't have to do that. Domino's is just raking it in. I mean, Domino's is really smart here to just be silent. Little Caesars, that's the one. Because here's the chain as I see it. And we'll debate it in the comment section below. I would love to. You can at me for sure. I think it goes Domino's, then Pizza Hut, and then it was like a tie between Papa John's and Little Caesars. Little Caesars, now you gotta get the jump. You gotta get that jump now on Papa John's because, again, they are now the pizza that had to denounce Nazism. Yikes.
I love this story so much for a couple reasons. I think that this one little story is a perfect microcosm for our broader politics.
Absolutely.
Papa John is one of our country's most famous reactionary CEOs. When Obamacare passed back in 2011, he famously went apoplectic and had like a total meltdown in public, saying that he now had to, because he had to give his employees all health insurance, he had to raise the price of his pizzas by 14 cents. And he was gonna do everything possible to pass the costs, this vicious burden of giving his employees' healthcare onto consumers, and he got a huge backlash then. So he has a little habit of wading into politics and having it bite him in the butt. But now, in 2017, it's the perfect microcosm of rich CEO Republican guy wading into politics. The sort of Nazi troll army kind of latching onto it, the rich Republican CEO guy being like, "Oh my God, who are these people?" And then having to like denounce them in some sort of awkward way. It's just perfect. It's just like the perfect little microcosm of what the Republican Party did to sort of like stoke the fears and stoke the little thing, the resentments of white nationalists for so long that is now metastasized and biting them. And
it's created a huge PR nightmare for them, which I suppose we shouldn't be too shocked at. The guy that thought he should definitely be the spokesperson for the company. He's one of the most awkward guys I've ever seen when he puts himself in those commercials. I mean, I'm not even fully convinced that he's blinked. That's another thing. Please tweet me if you have proof
he's ever
blinked. He's blinked. I want to see it. Send me those Papa John's
I believe this
GIFs.
Conspiracy theory. I'm on board.
My way. Better pizza, better ingredients. Papa John's.
I don't think that it's fair to say that the Republican Party at large has stoked the passions of white nationalists for years, but I do think that you, as a CEO, if you are in this day and age, you have to know what's going to happen if you wade into politics. And I think there are some times where it's appropriate and responsible to weigh in, but I mean, you have to know that it's going to. There's a very good chance that it could affect your business, your audience in some way.
It also feels like he wasn't totally clued in on to what the situation with the NFL was, because the way that he sort of talked about it was in these vague terms where he's, it's polarizing the customer, polarizing the country, but he doesn't really seem to understand why the players were taking a knee. He was like, this is just bad for business. And I think that just shows that it is, again, you have this rich CEO, don't. Look, I think that you should say something. I absolutely agree with why the players are kneeling. But if you don't agree, then you probably don't understand why, and then you should just shut the fuck up. Shut up and stop putting yourself in your own commercials. Like that's the solution here. Is you love to hear yourself talk and you don't know shit about what's happening. So
I just love the idea that an NFL anthem protest
came down really hard on Papa John's
customers.
Big Domino's fan here. Big Domino's.
Papa John's people, they're the Papa John's customers in the stores are just divided. Some of them sit on one side, the other ones sit on the other side. And they just delineate based on their position on the anthem protest. So it makes total sense.
We can't even have pizza anymore, guys. We can't even break pizza together as Americans. That's what we've come to. Okay, Taylor Swift, she's in the news. She's in the news because the ACLU actually reached out to her lawyer, and some people are claiming that her legal team is trying to contain or restrict freedom of speech. So here's what happened. I guess, and honestly, I didn't even know about this until we started talking about this, but apparently some people on the alt-right have found some symbolism that they like within her lyrics, especially in the song and the video, Look What You Made Me Do. So there was a blogger from Popfront that wrote this about that single, saying Taylor's lyrics in Look What You Made Me Do seem to play to the subtle, quiet white support of a racial hierarchy. Many on the alt-right see the song as part of a reawakening, adding that that's in line with Trump's rise, adding that they found some Nazi imagery in that video akin to Taylor. We have an image of this actually in the video of Taylor looking out over this room full of models from a podium, and this writer, this blogger says that is reminiscent of what Hitler did, Hitler iconography. Okay, so her lawyers responded to Popfront. There you go. You can see that's what the models look like in the audience there in that video. So her lawyer sent a cease and desist letter to this writer Megan Herning and her lawyer said the pop front story is replete with demonstrable and offensive falsehoods which bear no relation to reality or the truth about Ms. Swift. It appears to be a malicious attack against Ms. Swift that goes to great lengths to portray Ms. Swift as some sort of white supremacist figurehead, which is a baseless fiction masquerading as fact and completely misrepresents Ms. Swift. So then that prompted the writer, Megan Herning, to contact the ACLU. And then lawyers from the ACLU have sent a letter to Taylor Swift's lawyer saying the blog is a mix of core political speech and critical commentary. It discusses current politics in this country, the recent rise of white supremacy, and the fact that some white supremacists have apparently embraced Mrs. Swift. So there you see the ACLU defending this blogger's freedom of speech. And now there are some articles out there where people are saying that her lawyers are trying to silence this writer. What do you guys think about this?
It's the Streisand effect again. So you say, don't talk about this article that Taylor Swift didn't like, and now I had never, heard of this article before, and now we're talking about it. I think this is really cold on the part of Taylor Swift. I have to wonder what went on behind the scenes here. Did she ask her lawyer? Did she sanction this, or was this lawyer, maybe there's a protocol in the team of Swift, and it's like if you see the following things, then you gotta go after them and hit him with a cease and desist. Why? I just don't understand. The Taylor's a person. She's not an entity. I know that we sometimes feel as though she is because she's a huge pop star, but she's a person. If you disagree with what someone's saying, engage with them. You have a Twitter account, you have an Instagram account. When Breitbart was retweeting the lyrics to Look What You Made Me Do, I don't understand why Taylor Swift didn't just quote one of those tweets and just said like, hey, fuck these guys, or like, hey, I don't like this. I don't support you guys retweeting my lyrics. This isn't what the song's about. But she doesn't. She stays silent, and I think it's really disappointing. And just to get a lawyer involved, the person who wrote this is a person with an opinion that they feel is substantiated by certain things. Taylor Swift is a person. Engage with people that are inserting their criticism of your art. Just be a person about it.
Like you said, this is pop front, whatever that is. It's not the only outlet to draw this comparison between alt-right propaganda and Taylor Swift's songs. Other major outlets did. I think Vice was one of them. There were a couple of others. So I'm sort of thinking that maybe the lawyers targeted this one because it might have seemed like a more attainable target. Yeah. You know what I mean?
The little guy,
yeah, exactly.
Powerful person. Attacking the. I mean, if it was in the New York Times, they wouldn't dare, right? And I think that this is like, I mean, the actual take itself that the blogger had, I mean, I feel is probably, looking way too deep into something. I mean, Taylor Swift is a frivolous.
Yeah.
It's a huge reach. I mean, Taylor Swift is like a frivolous pop star, and the song is a totally frivolous song. It's impossible to like read anything deeper into it other than like the top surface level thing. So, but that doesn't mean that that we should condone a sort of more powerful person from silencing a less powerful person just because they don't like what the person said, right? Like, I mean, and we're starting to see a growing trend in America of rich people basically shutting down journalism about them that they don't like. I mean, there was the Peter Thiel shutdown of Gawker, right? It was a war that he waged for years and ended up winning. I mean, it set like a huge precedent. I think that that is very concerning for those of us that work in the media, especially, and we're paid to, say stuff about people. And if we say we attack someone for whatever reason, and it wasn't Taylor Swift, it was actually like a more sinister person or whatever, and then we were approached with one of these cease and desist letters. Our ability to fight back is much more limited than their ability to attack us. So.
Right, yeah, and the interesting thing is there is a through line between several of the stories that we discussed today, like you brought up. A lot of people are drawing comparisons between the way that Disney, Weinstein, and Taylor Swift's legal team have communicated with the press as of late. So that's where we're gonna leave it for today. That is our show for today. Thank you so much for joining us, guys. Thank you to Grace, thank you to Nando, and yeah, we can thank JR too.
Yeah, thank you, JR.
We'll see you guys later.